Hello, we're going to talk today about social justice and education. So let's jump right into it. Let me pull up the presentation. Okay, here we go. Okay, so social justice, education. Why are we even talking about this? Well, we have a basic problem that's arisen over the millennia due to capitalism, which is the rich get rich, the poor get poor. And how in the world do we break this cycle so that everybody can enjoy the fruits of what is going on in our ever growing, ever enriching civilization? So the problem is the following. When capital grows faster than the economy is measuring income and cash flows, but capital is assets there. When the assets are growing faster than the economy, then inequality increases. In part, this is because the capital income is more unequally distributed than the labor income. That is, the rich have more of the capital than the poor do. And it's also that the rich have more of the labor income than the poor do. And the rich use their assets with proper money management to get even richer, on top of the money that they get through wages. So inequality is increasing, not decreasing, as economic growth increases. So the wealthy individuals over time would push for more influence, which would change the political and economic institutions in their favor. They continually distort the underlying economics. If you examine any major industry, oil is always a poster child because the price you pay for gasoline at the pump is so distorted due to the incredible influence the oil companies have had on the tax code that it really bears no relationship to the costs. But in other areas, such as telecommunications, you end up with the same sort of distortions occurring. High-speed internet is available to wealthy individuals, not necessarily to people living out in the far realms of Montana. And so it goes. And the pharma is another example of this. So inequality like this is unsustainable. You can't continue to have the average return on capital be higher than the underlying economic growth rate, and those that inherit the money get richer. So there's a support system in place that the wealthy and their progeny continue to get more money. So even someone who's quote unquote mediocre, but it happens to win the lottery and be born into a rich family, there's a support system in place with all of this capital to keep them there. Whereas if you're poor, there is no such support system. If you're poor, you stay poor unless you break out of it. So that's why we call this a systemic issue. And it isn't necessarily intrinsic. Other societies, such as Native Americans, shared assets. They don't even have a word for property in their native tongues. And so therefore, it's viewed as the ownership of capital by individuals rather than society creates this problem. In the US, we've got a growth of low-skilled individuals after the mid-1970s, while individuals near the top of the wage distribution, the ones that really pulling the big bucks, enjoyed rapid and sustained wage growth since over the last 50 years. So human capital, which is the combination of skills and training that individuals bring to the labor market, is increasingly rewarded, while those lacking those skills and training lose. The technological innovation and globalization of things like the internet and modern communications have pushed up the demand for highly skilled knowledge workers, especially in service industries. And the fraction of people working in manufacturing industries has dropped significantly, while the bulk of people are now working in service industries. And this increases the advantage of people that have greater human capital. So the US income inequality is increasing across the whole income spectrum. It's not just the very rich and the very poor, and it's not unique to the top or the bottom. But wages for US earners in the 99th percentile increased faster than those relative to the 95th. But that was also true. The 95th increased faster than the 60th. The 60th increased faster than the 50th. The 20th increased faster than the 10th, and so it goes. So net, the rich get richer, the poor get poorer. And we have here a little picture just to show what's going on here. That this picture is showing that something like 50% of the total wealth in 2022 went to the top 10%. The next 40% had 28%, and the bottom 50% had 2.4%. And this gap will be increasing. And in fact, we'll see in a second what's going on. So the income gap here is really a skills gap. And the demand for highly skilled workers has contributed directly and indirectly to this observed rise in inequality. Employers hike wages for people who have the skills they need. Individuals have an incentive to increase their own skills if they can, going to night school, taking online classes, and so forth. And this in turn will exacerbate the overall income inequality. So the haves are those that are educated. The more education, the better. And the have-nots are those who didn't finish college or only graduated from high school. And this results in a so-called college premium, going deeply into debt to get a college degree. From 1970 to 2005, this education premium, measured in how much money you got working, was accounted for 60% of this rise in wage inequality. So the rich get richer, the poor get poorer. The rich accumulate assets. They have money managers who invest those assets to make more money at faster rates than the wages that are rising. The poor have little to no assets, no need to worry about money managers there aren't any. And they survive on wages which allow a standard of living, but not security for old age. In fact, the poor get exploited there. Same-day payday companies that many of the poor don't even have bank accounts. So they give them cash for their paycheck. You might ask, how are you going to cash your paycheck? And in return for this, they reduce their paycheck. There's a service fee that they charge. So they just continue to fall behind the curve. Transfer payments are really just short-term fixes. I mean, clearly, if you need to eat, you need to eat, but after you eat, you need to eat again, and so getting a bag lunch, getting some money, that's just a short-term fix. It doesn't fix the real problem long-term. And here's a picture here showing the 95th percentile with the average weekly wage that has just been increasing from 1960 to the year 2010. It more than doubled here, as you can see, for the 95th percentile. But the 10th percentile, it's flat. There's no real gain here in how much money they're making in terms of average weekly wage. So let's now look at social justice. Social justice involves society providing justice for all, providing in particular material benefits such as housing and lodging, food, medical care, education, sports activities, fine arts, such as music, painting, sculpture, drama, and then ethics, or love and compassion for others, spirituality in your life. And all of this is to enjoy and have fun in life and grow in intellect and in spirit, to have compassion for your neighbor, to love yourself. So education is a viable path for moving up, to earn more money and attain more material assets. The education is going to train individuals to use tools, such as they learn to read, they learn to write, and they end up with critical thought, so they can gather information on their own, analyze this information on their own, and interpret and act on this information. So one of the things that happened in the United States after the Civil War was there was a McGuffey reader that was widely used, and this taught individuals how to read and write, and they also picked up some smattering of arithmetic. And what did they read and write when they went home? There are two books that pretty much every family had once you leave the cities. Those books were the Bible and the Sears catalog, and that was all they could afford. But it was enough that it showed them, look at the things in the Sears catalog. We should aspire to get more money so that we can get these things. Now, today, the internet provides a lot of unique capabilities for gathering, analyzing, and interpreting information. And clearly, there's a lot of destructive use of the internet for doing this, but the tools are there to allow you to carry out these things. You can get thousands of online classes from the premier universities in the United States, for example. Do a complete bachelor's, master's, doctorate even in all kinds of things. So 50 years ago, what did education look like? Well, there was basic skills that you learned, such as reading, writing, and arithmetic. You had some phys ed classes, and then you had some elective vocational classes, such as wood shop, where you'd learn how to use a wood lathe, a drill press, a router for cutting channels, routing something, a metal shop where you'd learn how to solder and how to even weld, how to bend metal, and so forth. Automotive shop where you'd learn about an automotive engine typically, but the rest of the car, the starter motor, the brakes, the fuel injection system, you name it, was all caught up there. You could pull your engine. A lot of automotive shops had winches for doing this. Home economics, you would learn how to sew, put a button on something, how to bake. You do snickerdoodles and brownies and pizza. And then there were cooperative programs with local businesses where you could pick up vocational skills. And once you left this kind of core area here, there were a whole bunch of electives, such as those in mathematics, in the sciences, physics, chemistry, biology. There was the start of computer programming and digital systems hardware scattered here and there, not a lot of it. A lot of language arts, such as English and other foreign languages, or even Latin. History and civics classes, music, which typically comprise band and orchestra, and then art classes such as painting and sculpture, and rarely music appreciation. So that's what went into education 50 years ago. Virtually the whole vocational side of things is just now a shell of what this was. And the emphasis has shifted to these much more intellectual activities here that we touched on. And phys ed, of course, hasn't gone away. So today, what sorts of things could be taught? Well, we can find the need for accountants, for carpentry, plumbing, electricians, computer literacy, arborists. These are just some examples of all very well-paid trades that people go into and have a very satisfying life, and they can make perfectly good money. And if they want to advance their skills in this, especially with some training in computers, they can learn how to, for example, make drones, which, for example, real estate agents use today, or they could learn how to program 3D printers to do various things. And they could use the 3D printers for art, for creating jewelry, for creating sculpture, and other things that we would call commercial. So a very different thing than what we saw. The thing that's come out of this is to have a very tangible hands-on education, not a lecture mode, but a very touchy-feely, tangible, here's what we're doing. And this activity is called makerspace. So the maker education, maker says, we're going to make something. You're going to touchy-feely, whatever it is. It's a piece of jewelry that I did out of my 3D printer. I made some soap or I made some candles, for example, or I made chalk, you name it. And but a lot of this also goes into the area of digital hardware systems and software, which we'll see here. So you learn by doing. This is a very much experiential education. You attract and retain everybody by having them work together. You typically pair up students so that they're doing things together, so which ensures emotional and physical safety, and the wheels don't come off anywhere. You're designing creative initiatives and programming to cultivate long-term engagements, and you're empowering through confidence to make equitable procurement and training classes and tailor the development to increase the values. So the community here assembles a diverse team of people that covers all the bases, all the skill sets that are needed. There's safety, so that the space is mentally and physically safe for everybody. You explore this community. You're inclusive in this. You go out of your way to try audacious teaching and learning methods. You try new ideas. You assemble intellectual exploration teams, trying to think outside the box, and collaboratively you try and solve problems. So the key thing about the makerspace movement is it's committed to collaborative design, but these solutions have to align with the Black Lives Matter movement. There's advocacy for the lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, intersex, and asexual rights. And there's a support for the Asian Pacific and Pacific Islander community, the Black, Indigenous, and people of color community, and persons with disability community, all to create a diverse, equitable, and inclusive makerspace. So here's examples of some makerspace art. You can create all kinds of things here. If you start looking around, necklaces, earrings, sculptures, and then innovative things like light boxes, for example. All kinds of collages can be put together, and so it goes. In the digital technology side of things, we have things like Arduino and Raspberry Pi processors that are on a board here, and then students would look at hooking these things up in different ways or changing the software in these things, such as shown here, so that they could do something like control a drone that's shown over here, or you're controlling a 3D printer here for doing something. So as a concrete example of this, in 2015, I visited Fairchild Wheeler, which is a STEM school in Bridgeport, Connecticut. It's one of a brand new high school in Bridgeport. It has 2,000 student capacity, but it's broken down into 3 schools: biology, information technology, and engineering. It's right next to Sikorsky, the helicopter company. So it's very strong ties to Sikorsky and engineering. And I toured the school and I said, well, this is wonderful. What we should do here is have a common project to bring the 3 different silos together. So let's concentrate on making a payload for a space satellite. We'll put it in orbit. So I received pushback from this. Not surprisingly, I said, well, if you take a look at every 10 days, 15 days, there's a supply mission to the International Space Station. And you can go on the web and you'll see there's always photos there showing that this supply mission, here's the supplies going up to it. But if you look at the supplies that are piled up there, you'll see next to them are 10, 20, 30, 10 centimeter cubes. So these cubes are called CubeSats or nanosats. They're souped up cell phones. and they're put into orbit. Some of them have radios on them that broadcast on a particular frequency. The ham radio crew has agreed to listen in on this frequency, so if they detect something there, they'll go capture it and store it digitally so that you can read it out later, so you can see what in the world your satellite was trying to send by telemetry. These things there's hundreds of them in orbit. They're put together by hobby groups, high school groups, college groups, whoever, that have something that they find intriguing and they want to learn. A lot of it you learn more by doing it than by the actual experiment, whatever it is that you're trying to do. The experience of putting it all together is worth everything. And so we had to figure out where to start on this. So we started with Makerspace. The school admits 500 students a year. So we took the students that had just finished 8th grade, and we got them for 3 mornings at the end of June. 3 mornings, that's it. And we paired them up, 250 pairs, and each of them got a bag, which cost roughly $50 to put together. And inside the bag was an Arduino processor, like shown here. And they also had a power supply, and 27 experiments. And the bag contained a lot of peripherals for their Arduino processor. So the first thing they had to do was identify the processor board, hook it up to a power supply, and turn the power supply on, hook up a light emitting diode, and then change the software script in the Arduino processor so that the LED turned on for 1 second, off for 1 second, on for 1 second. So in training the teachers to take the students through this, they said, well, what if we have a problem? And I said, well, if you have a problem with your phone, with some app on your phone, what do? Don't you give it to a kid and the kid figures it out and gives it back to you? So that's exactly what happened here. Some of the students figured out how to hook the power supply up, how to hook up the LED, how to change the software script. And they started to show the other students, and that is always a good way to learn something, is to teach it to someone else. That really reinforces what you didn't understand, believe you me. And this led to this thing taking off, and the students loved it, and they got all enthused, and they were going to use this now in all their classes. They had lots of 3D printers available, so they were going to use those as well. They were looking at putting a payload for a balloon. Maybe they'll tether a balloon over the school, 300, 400 feet up, get weather reports from up there, and maybe do a free air balloon launch, which requires FAA approval because you're getting the balloon up where commercial airplanes fly and so forth. And so 18 months after we did this, NASA sent out an RFP, a request for proposal, to 3,000 high schools who responded, and 20 were selected. This school was selected. It's a magnet school, so a Fairchild Wheeler. And so they, in fact, put a experiment together. It went up to the International Space Station and came back. So we did what we said we would set out to do. And it was possible because of dealing with this makerspace technology. So the students that we took through this not only got hands-on digital systems experience, but we also gave them some lectures in statistics using Excel to put together ways to gather and then display data, typically graphically, and some classes on Python. So net, the kids that went through this are employable. They understand Python, they understand digital hardware systems and how to put things together, and they understand statistics, gathering data and scrubbing data and analyzing data. And so that's an example of what could come out of this sort of program. So with that, let's stop. Thank you very much for your time, and on to the next one.